Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Clarksville's Political Forum. I'm Van Stokes, your moderator for today's session, and on behalf of Leadership Clarksville and your Clarksville Area Chamber of Commerce, we're pleased that you could join us today. Today's forum is coming to you from the Customs House Museum and Cultural Center here in Clarksville. This forum is intended, as they all are, to give you, the voters, an informed choice when you go to the polls to cast your vote on November the 3rd. Today, we're going to have the opportunity to talk with the candidates who will be on the ballot for the Tennessee State Senate, District number 22. They are, to my left, Mr. Bill Powers and Mr. Ronnie Glenn. Now, in a moment, they will each have 2 minutes in which to present opening comments from their seats here at the table. Following their opening remarks, we will then turn to our panelists for questions. Joining us today on my right are our panelists, Mr. Jimmy Settle, Mr. Lee Irwin, and Mr. Jay Albertia. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to each question from our panelists. Answers will be given in a rotating order. Now, at the conclusion of the questioning, each candidate will have 2 minutes in which to present closing statements. They will come in reverse order from the opening statements. Our timekeeper for this session is Mr. Phil Harpel. Under the Tennessee Constitution, legislative authority is vested in the General Assembly, which consists of a Senate and a House of Representatives here in the state of Tennessee. The Senate is comprised of 33 members who are elected to 4-year terms of office, each representing their respective districts, and there's no limit on the number of terms a legislator may serve. In general, the functions of the legislator is to enact, amend, repeal the laws of the state of Tennessee, and some of the specific powers granted to the General Assembly by the state constitution include the appropriation of all money to be paid out of the state treasury, the levy and collection of taxes, and the right to authorize counties and incorporated towns to levy taxes. The Senate has certain powers and obligations that are different from those in the House of Representatives. The Senate is given the power to try impeachment proceedings that must be initiated by the House. Without further ado now, let's go to our candidates for opening comments. We will hear first from Mr. Bill Powers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stokes, and thank you to Leadership Clarksville for having us here today. It's certainly an honor. I've been through this a time or two before, but my name is Bill Powers, and I am your current state senator, and it's an honor to serve you in the state senate. I've been there for the past 18 months, and it is just a fantastic job. I can't tell you how much I enjoy it. I was born and raised here in Clarksville. I went to local schools, local public schools. I went to Smith School, Greenwood, and Clarksville High. From there, I went to the University of Tennessee. I was an honor graduate at the University of Tennessee. And after that, I went to Acme Boot, actually, and I worked there for 9 years. After I got married to my wife, Fran Johnson Powers, I went to work for my father-in-law, and today I'm one of the owners at White Johnson, and I've been there for 32 years. I'm a businessman at heart. However, my passion has always been to give back to the community, and that's what I've done here. I think it's important to note here that in my city council, I've done 2 terms on city council, and in those, I've never taken a dime for public service. When I get paid for public service, I write a check as soon as I get paid to a local nonprofit of my choosing, and first time I did it, it just felt good, and since then I've been doing it ever since. So those are kind of the things that make me a bit different than some of the candidates that I've run against in the past, and just being born and raised here. So once again, thanks everybody for being with us here today, and I look forward to further discussion here. Thanks.
Thank you for those opening comments. We will turn next for opening remarks from Mr. Ronnie Glenn.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Leadership Clarksville and Chambers Commerce. My name is Ronnie Glenn. I was born and raised in Tennessee, small town in West Tennessee. Joined the Army when I was 20 years old. Spent the next 23 and a half years serving my country. Did 3 deployments. I retired in 2014. Got here in Clarksville actually in 2006, retired in 2014. I'm a small business owner. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration. Also, I'm an active member of Big Brothers Big Sister. I really enjoy that. And I'm an executive member of the Montgomery County Democratic Party. My wife and I, we've been married for 29 years. We have 4 kids, 11 grandkids. So you can obviously imagine we stay pretty busy. And we also attend First Missionary Baptist Church here in Clarksville off of Trenton Road. I'm running because I believe we have to make some changes in our state house. I'm running on integrity and my ability to lead and advocating for a cause that's bigger than myself. We've seen now for the last few years what happens when we take the American people for granted. So I am running to be your next state senator. I ask that you give me a chance and ask for your vote come November. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glenn, for those opening remarks. We'll now turn to our panelists for questions to each of the candidates. We'll begin with Mr. Jimmy Settle.
Thank you, Van. So just to piggyback on your opening comments for both of you, what uniquely qualifies you for an office in state government? What truly sets you apart from your opponent and from any other prospective person who might aspire to this position in the Senate?
And goes to Mr. Powers first.
Thank you, Jimmy, for that. I think what qualifies me for that is that I was born and raised here, that I have lived here my whole life. I will tell people that I know the difference between 5 Points and Fredonia, and I know the difference between Barksdale and Bel Air. And it's just having that hometown relationships and also the people that I know through my years here, between Boy Scouts and swim team and Clarksville High School, Greenwood. I've just been here a long time, and I understand the problems that we have here, and I've tried to address them in times past, and I look forward to doing that in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Jimmy. I think what sets me apart from, as you said, any other candidate is I have not served in public office, so I am not beholding to a certain party or a certain ideology. I believe that my military career and my military background led me to represent many different backgrounds and cultures. So my beliefs and what I believe is helping people is what separates me. I believe in putting the people first over politics, and I believe that we should govern by that way. I as well was born in Tennessee, and I've lived the life that I choose. I've lived the life that I'm advocating for. So I think that's what makes me uniquely qualified. I can speak to the life that most District 22 people are feeling right now.
Thank you very much. We are underway now with our questions to the candidates. Mr. Lee Irwin, you have the next question, and Mr. Glenn, you have the next response.
Mr. Glenn, now narrowing it down, I guess, to one of the top issues, what is one of the top issues that you think is specific to our district, and what plan do you have to address that issue?
Thank you, Mr. Lee Irvin, I believe it was. I believe education, the funding of our education and our kids. As I said, I am an active member of the Big Brothers and Big Sister program. And as well as having 11 grandkids, I know how important education is. I believe that when we talk education, we should not be taking money from our public education, especially to the tune of $70 million. And I also believe we cannot have public dollars going to private schools. We have to ensure that we are putting that money into our public education. We have to make sure that we're giving our teachers the proper raises and not taking money from them. If we are to bring the most talented and brightest teachers to educate our kids in the future, we have to ensure that we're taking care of them. So I really believe education is that top priority for District 22, and we have to make sure we're fully funding it at all times.
Thank you. Mr. Powers.
Thank you for that one. I really think that infrastructure is a huge problem around Clarksville. We see gridlock everywhere, on especially the early in the morning and late in the afternoons. And so we at the state have made a great strides with 4813 and Warfield Boulevard, but there's still things to go. We've still got the Rossview Road project. We've got the Trenton Road project. And then Riverside Drive is another one that needs to be addressed. So we will be looking at those in the future also. So, and in addition to that, I mean, I too could speak to education, but I will leave it at infrastructure. I really think that infrastructure is where we need to be focused. Let me also say this, that our state is one of 3 states in the nation that has zero in road debt. We are very good when it comes to money, and in particular for roads. So when we do roads, they are paid for at that time. We have no road debt in the state of Tennessee.
Thank you very much. Mr. J. Albertia, we go to you next, and your question will go to Mr. Powers.
Mr. Powers, you were just speaking about road construction and infrastructure. With the Improve Act, there is funding available for road projects. How do you propose to speed up the timeline to complete some of those needed projects that you mentioned a little while ago?
You know, speeding up the timeline at this particular juncture, it's kind of been usurped by the COVID environment that we're in, and certainly we'll be looking at that, and as the funds and as we return to a certain normalcy, I think you will see that return. But right now, I think the pandemic's kind of taken over to a great degree, and it's also taken up these road projects. Let me also say, though, that we continue to soldier on in those projects because, you know, for the most part, they are outside jobs. So I don't see them being delayed that much, but I do see them being somewhat delayed as a result. But we are very good at roads here in the state of Tennessee. You have to do no more than drive to Kentucky to see the difference. So that's my goals there.
Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. J. I believe that in a way to speed up our roads, we have to make sure that we are Tennessee first when we're outsourcing these road projects. I believe when we go outside of Tennessee, there are so many other jobs that these contractors have that delay us getting road projects taken care of. I do believe what Bill says as well, that COVID has had a part in ensuring or making sure we're expediting our roads. COVID has come in and just really slowed us down as a economy and as a society. So I do believe that if we look inside of Tennessee and we making sure that we are Tennessee first in our contractors, that there are many contractors within the area that can work these jobs and help to expedite them.
Thank you very much. Let's begin again with our panelist. Mr. Jimmy Settle, you have the next question, and that will go to Mr. Glenn for the next response.
Thank you. Mr. Glenn, I will ask one more question about road projects because it is a very important topic here at the state level. And since we're talking about speeding up road projects, and that if we were given the opportunity to say these are the top 2 or 3 or 4 road projects that need to go today, what are they in your mind?
Thank you, Mr. Jimmy. As you drive around Montgomery County, in particular, there are projects that's going on Exit 8. There is a lot of expansion going on at Exit 8. There's also expansion going on down Peaches Mill Road. Now, that is a 2-lane road, but it's going to get overcrowded because there's a lot of area there that is continuing to grow. We see that Tylertown has expanded in terms of residential housing. When you look at Tylertown, they did put a fire department out there, but they did not expand the road. And they're putting, I believe, about 500 additional homes out there. So I believe Tylertown is another area that really we could speed up the road. I think those are the three. I know you asked for four, but those three stick out the most to me. So I think that's where we should go.
Mr. Powers.
I'm going to assume that since you asked the question, you're talking about state roads, and the state roads that we need to address in this town. As I see it, number one by far is Trenton Road. And Trenton Road, as I understand it, the contract's been let for the engineering on that road. So, and it's going to be from the interstate all the way down to Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. But it's going to be it's going to be 2 or 3 years before that thing gets going, and they also have to take a bunch of property. But anyway, my first road obviously is Trenton Road. Second for me would be Rossview. I think it's a spur that goes with it. And once again, that's a state road. Now getting off into the other roads that go with it, there's a Cardinal Lane over there, and that's a city road. But Rossview Road, and then lastly would be Riverside Drive. We need to do something to address it, especially down there at the intersection with Shoney's and McDonald's. Those are my three.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee Irwin, you have the next question, and it goes to Mr. Bill Powers.
Mr. Powers, we've talked about COVID-19 and the economy. Now, what role do you plan to play in improving our economic development for our area?
Actually, I was on, Governor Lee asked me to be on the economic recovery team for the state of Tennessee, and I was on it was the retail division that I was on, and it was very enlightening to do that. But basically what we need to do, there's a balance, and there's a balance between lives and livelihood. And you've got to make sure, I think it's important to note here, that we've not, especially as it relates to education, there's only been one death in the 11 to 20-year-old bracket. So we really, it's not something that affects these younger kids. So, but we need to be mindful and do everything that we can to ensure that there's a difference, or that we don't impact both lives and livelihood. We got to get this economy back going. It's imperative that we derive the tax dollars that we need to get this state back on track.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Appreciate your response. Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Jimmy. I believe the economic recovery, really and truly, I believe it was flawed from the beginning, and because of that, we're suffering so much in our economic recovery. There's no doubt COVID really hurt the economy. There's no doubt about it. But I believe when we think about economic recovery, the pandemic has to be taken care of first. If we do not take care of the pandemic, then there will be no economic recovery. There will continue to be these spot-ups of these hot spots of COVID, which continues to affect the everyday working Tennessean. The one thing that we cannot recover from is sick workers. So if you have a sick workforce, there is no way we can recover, because they will not be able to go to work, and if they do, they're going to continue to spread this pandemic. So I believe we have to make sure that we get the pandemic under control first, and then we can have a true economic recovery.
Thank you very much. Mr. J. Albertia, you have the next question, and it will go to Mr. Glenn for the first response.
Good morning. Right now, there are several states dealing with the removal of statues and figures throughout all of the states. Right now, the state is dealing with Nathan Bedford Forrest's bust inside the Capitol. It's working its way through the committees now. What are both of your personal beliefs on the bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest? Should it be removed, and is the State Museum the correct place for it to be?
Thank you, Mr. J. That is a very, very hot topic, and it's a very good question. When we have a constant reminder of things that have totally affected us in the past, and when I say us, I'm talking about me as a black man. So I think I can speak for the black community when I say anything that reminds us of a very terrible time in our history does not need to be on display in the state capitol. Do I think the museum is a good place for it? Absolutely. I have no problem with it going to the museum because we should know our history. We should know how we got to where we at. So when we talk of the past, we have to move it from right in front of us in order to allow us to move forward. So the museum will be a perfect place for it. So yes, that's my answer.
Mr. Powers.
Thank you for that one. It's obviously this is a tough question, and it's a touchy question, and it's one that honestly has not come before us yet. It's going through the proper channels. It's going through the historical commissions, and come January, it won't be moved anytime soon. It will be moved, next year, if it is to be moved. I do have a hard time with erasing history. I think history is those that forget history are doomed to repeat it, and I think we certainly learn lessons as a people from our histories. That being said, I just don't know exactly. I'll be honest with you. I just don't know exactly how I would vote. But I do know where it is today. I don't think it's hurting anyone, other than there are some groups that are certainly mad about it. But I don't think that we should have It's been there for a long time, and erasing history is just not something I want to take part in.
We are talking with candidates who will be on the ballot November the 3rd for the Tennessee State Senate, representing District Number 22. They are Mr. Bill Powers and Mr. Ronnie Glenn. So far, we have heard questions from our panelists dealing with priorities in the state and in our district, dealing with infrastructure, road projects, economic development in these times of COVID-19, as well as positions on removal of statues, perhaps in and around the state. Let's continue our questions, if we can, from our panelists. Let's go next to Mr. Jimmy Settle. Your question will go to Mr. Bill Powers.
Thank you. Mr. Powers, if you'll forgive me, I want to back up and talk just a little bit more about the COVID response, because this is, I look around this room and we're wearing masks. This is just such an unusual time in our history right now. We've talked a little bit about the economic impact of it, but how do you feel about the health and safety response from the state and the federal government? Has it been too swift? Has it been too slow? Has it been the right response? We're learning new stuff about this virus every day, it seems like. What is the right response to this for health and safety?
Thank you, Jimmy, for that one. My response there is there is no doubt in my mind that COVID is real. However, it also affects a portion of the population that's infirmed. And when I say that, I'm talking about people that have COPD, diabetes, other maladies that make them predisposed for this disease. I think we've lost 43 deaths in Montgomery County as a result of this pandemic, and certainly I think it's said that 90 to 95% of them have predisposed. So I think what we need to do there is ensure that the people that are predisposed are indeed quarantined and stay away from the other folks that may or may not have it. I personally think that I've had it back in January and February, and my wife too, and my youngest son Henry. So I think that once again, there's a balance that needs to be struck there between lives and livelihood. We can't wreck our economy over this as we're coming out.
Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Jimmy. I do think our COVID response was failed. I think we failed the district and the state. If we react when there is a problem, and if we react properly, we can save lives. One death due to COVID is one death too many. So when we talk, how do you respond when there's a crisis? You have to take the tough measures. You have to make sure that you are protecting livelihood. Again, I am a believer in the economy. I believe the economy is, we have to make a living every day, so the economy has to stay strong. But again, you cannot have a strong economy with a sick workforce. And, unfortunately, we made decisions based on political reasons, and that is not how you how you take care of the people that you're sworn to protect and serve. So I think we could have done a lot better. I think it was a failed response.
Mr. Lear, when you have the next question, it goes to Mr. Glenn for the next response.
Mr. Glenn, communication, very important in this day and age, especially. How do you propose to stay connected with the residents of District 22 to, say, increase their involvement in planning for the area's future?
Thank you, sir, Mr. Lear. Communication is the key to ensuring that we know what's going on in the everyday lives of District 22. About a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I spent time down in Houston County to talk with the constituents there. Next week, I am going to Stewart County to talk with them. And I've been obviously living here in Montgomery County. I'm out every day, every weekend, talking with constituents. The only way to understand the issues is to be there, to be in front of the constituents that you're vowing to serve and understand and talk, and even the ones that do not agree with you. I had a long conversation, a 20-minute conversation with someone who's on a different political side than I am. It was the most respectful conversation that I've seen in a long time. So we can have that conversation as long as we show up and we're there and we speak to people, even the ones who do not agree with us.
Mr. Powers.
Would you repeat the question for me there, please?
Yes. How do you propose to stay connected with residents of District 22, sort of to increase their involvement in the planning for the district's future, for the state's future?
Thank you for that one, Lee. I have stayed connected basically with the telephone in my office. I do have an office where people can call, and every time I go and speak to people, I let them know that it's really not my office, it's their office, and I want them to make sure that they know that they're welcome to come be with me. I hand out cards. My cell phone is all over the internet. You can find it anywhere, so I'm certainly not hiding. My email address is out there also for anyone who wants to see it, and for all of them, I go to about every city council meeting and every county commission meeting in all three counties, and I have for the last year and a half, ever since I was elected. So I just kind of pride myself on being out there and being available to the people, and I also have done some surveys over time to residents and getting feedback on their views and on the issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. J. Alberti, you have the next question, and it goes to Mr. Bill Powers.
Mr. Powers, today our country is polarized at best. The relationship between both parties are pretty much strained, and we understand that we live under mostly a two-party system. How do you see working across the aisle as important to get things done in our state?
Well, I can tell you this, and this is no disrespect to the other party, but at this particular juncture, out of 33 Senate seats, there's 28 of us that are Republicans, and on the House side, it's very similar. There's 99 seats there, and 73 of them are Republicans. So we do reach across the aisle. We pretty much, well, we have to, or actually, I guess we don't have to, because we are what's termed a supermajority. However, we do, because we respect the rights and feelings of all people in the state of Tennessee, and we certainly try to include them in discussions. Certainly, that everybody's on committees, and we all have assignments, so it's up to everybody to get their voices heard. And I can assure you that in the state of Tennessee, that Republican, Democrat, Independent, everybody gets their voices heard.
Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. J. We are polarized, and we're polarized because we have decided somewhere along the line that the other voice is not important. And again, it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree. You have to be willing to listen and understand their concerns. Mr. Powers is correct. There is a supermajority in the House and in the representative. Unfortunately, the supermajority doesn't have to talk to the other party. So a lot of the bills that are being passed really is a party line vote. So there cannot be real understanding of the issues and what the other party said if it is a strictly party line vote. So I think if we begin to listen and respect each other again, then we can make some good things happen for Tennesseans as well as the district.
Thank you very much for that response. We have time for one more round of questions from our panelists. Let's go back to Mr. Jimmy Settle. Your question will go to Mr. Glenn.
Thank you. Mr. Glenn, both of you have alluded to the fact that the 22nd Senate District is, in fact, a three-county district: Montgomery County, Stewart County, and Houston County. Three very unique counties, three very different counties in terms of the challenges and opportunities that they face. So I'd like to hear from you what you feel are the challenges specific, the top challenges that are specific to all three of those counties.
Thank you, Mr. Jimmy. I think the top challenge is two things. Number one, for all three, is healthcare and education, and as well as for the rural communities, broadband access. We have an opportunity to ensure that all Tennesseans have access to affordable health care, and that's District 22, Stewart, and Houston as well. So that issue affects the entire district. Education affects the entire district, because when we talk, and this is how it works together with broadband, in our rural district, the broadband is so bad that so many times kids who have to do work have to go to a local fast food restaurant or whatever just to have access to the internet. As well as, how can you have a stay-at-home job if you do not have access to internet? So I think that within itself affects all three counties: the inability of health care, education, and broadband.
Mr. Powers.
Thank you for the question. That you are correct that these three counties are certainly different in their wants and needs. I can assure you that Houston County is the smallest of the three, is 8,000 people, and they really have a problem with growth. That they need some industry, they need some people to come in there and help them grow. They also have a real need as it relates to hospitals. They have a hospital out there that is just kind of hanging on. Actually, the COVID response has really helped them, but they do have a hospital that they need to get on better financial footing. Stewart County is, by all means, needs broadband, and Cumberland Connect is coming in right now, and they are going to fill that void, and that will be good for them. Also there, Stewart County needs everything there is for veterans and retirees. And lastly, Montgomery County, here it's mostly about infrastructure as well as jobs, as I see it, and taking advantage of the 450 to 500 soldiers that are getting out of the Army every day that we can get, or every month that we can get, to stay here and help us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee Irwin, your question goes to Mr. Powers.
Mr. Powers, tell us now a little bit about your position on the role of an elected official and the ethical standards they should be adhered to while they are in office.
Hit that first part one more time there, Lee.
Tell us about your position on the role of an elected official and the ethical standards they should be adhering to and following while in office.
I think that we as elected officials should stand head and shoulders above any other people that are. I think we should be held to a higher standard, and I don't have any patience whatsoever that with politicians that run afoul of the law. To me, that's kind of one of the things that is a prerequisite to run for office. I think that all elected officials should be beyond reproach, and that's just the way I see that one.
Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, I'm sorry. As elected officials, I think all elected officials, when we talk ethical standards, integrity comes to mind. We have to be honest when we speak to our constituents. We have to tell them the truth, even when the truth is not what sounds good to them. I believe when we are honest up front they will respect us more. And I also believe, as Bill said, we have to be beyond reproach. We have to make sure that, as elected officials, that we are abiding by the law, that we are doing the things that we expect, and we hope that everyone that we represent is doing. And so I believe, again, integrity is the biggest thing that comes to mind. Being someone who tells the truth up front and not waver from that, no matter how bad it may sound in the end.
Thank you very much. Mr. J. Albertia, you have the last question, and it will go to Mr. Glenn for the first response.
Mr. Glenn, I'm going to do a two-part question just because I'm the end, and I'm going to try to clean up a few. If elected, what Senate committee would you like to be appointed to? And the second part would be, what would be one of the first bills you would sponsor if elected?
I'm sorry. I believe I would love to be part of the education committee. I do believe in education. Again, as someone who has 11 grandkids, as well as a big brother, I think education is one of the most important roles we can have in our future, and in making sure that our kids have the proper resources and the teachers have the proper resources to grow. As far as bills, I would definitely want to bring back the $70 million that was taken from our public schools, as well as to make sure that the voucher program does not come back to our legislature.
Mr. Powers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Alberti. I think that for me, the biggest bill that we had a bill going through that was for Austin Peay, and we had a $42 million health science center for Austin Peay that was in the budget that went away as a result of COVID. But that's the bill that I would like to get back up before us, because that was going to allow us to double our nurses. We're turning away nursing students at Austin Peay, or nursing candidates at Austin Peay, with 3.8 grade point averages and high test scores. So we needed that one sorely because we can use those nurses. As for committees, what I would want to be on, I am currently on government operations, and I think I would probably stay on that one. However, if given the opportunity, and there probably won't be one, honestly, but finance committee, that's kind of my bailiwick, dealing in finance is just things that it's concrete and it's numbers, and those are things that I really enjoy dealing with as a businessman.
Thank you very much. That concludes the questions from our panelists today. We will now turn to our candidates for closing comments. They will come in reverse order from their opening comments. Each will have 2 minutes in which to deliver their closing remarks from their seats. We will hear first from Mr. Ronnie Glenn.
Thank you, sir. Again, thank you to Leadership Clarksville and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. The one thing I want you to take away from here is I am an open book. I have nothing to hide about what I believe the district is looking for, based on just talking with everyone and understanding. My integrity is without question. I believe in telling the truth no matter what, whether good or bad. And I have a genuine concern for others. I want to govern based on what it is that the people are asking for, not based on what my party decides or how my party see it. I believe that a genuine concern for people will allow us to make sure that we're taking care of those that we're sworn to represent. And so that's what I want everyone to leave with about Ronnie Glenn. I ask for your vote on November the 3rd, and thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have closing remarks from Mr. Bill Powers.
Well, thank you, Leadership Clarksville and the Chamber of Commerce, for having us here today. It's certainly always a pleasure to be here. I think what makes me a great candidate, or the best candidate, is my experience, and it's the things that I've done over time. It's the whole ball of wax, as they say, that makes me the best one. I was number one. I was born and raised here. I've lived here my whole life. I went to Smith School, Greenwood, and Clarksville High. I was chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I've been on the Economic Development Council. I was elected 2 terms to to the city council. I've been on the Roxy board. I was on the Visitors and Convention Bureau board. I've been through Leadership Clarksville. I've been through Leadership Middle Tennessee. I was the chairman of Gas and Water. I was also the chairman of Parks and Recreation. Lastly, I was also on the Power Board at CDE, which kind of relates to the finance we were talking about earlier. That was my favorite board of all, was being on the Power Board. Not only the electric department division, but the broadband, which has proven to be invaluable for me and the things that we're doing at the state level. So having those life experiences in a 20-year time span, somewhere in there, I think makes me uniquely qualified to benefit everybody in the entire counties of Stewart, Houston, and Montgomery. And I look forward to serving another 4 years. Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to each of our candidates today, Mr. Bill Powers and Mr. Ronnie Glenn, for sharing your time and your thoughts. And I can speak for everybody who's present here today. Truly respect the way that you have approached these challenging questions from our panelists today. And more than that, I want to thank each one of you for being willing to represent District 22 in the Tennessee State Senate should you be elected this November. I want to remind those of you who are watching that early voting will take place starting Wednesday, October the 14th, and that will run through Thursday, October the 29th. The location will be at the Election Commission office. They are at 350 Pageant Lane, Suite 404. I want to say thank you also to our panelists for this session, Mr. Jimmy Settle, Mr. Lee Irwin, and Mr. Jay Albertia. Thank you, gentlemen, for those insightful questions. And also thanks to our timekeeper today, Mr. Phil Harpel. Thanks also to the staff here at the Customs House Museum and Cultural Center for hosting today's forum. And thanks also to Leadership Clarksville and your Clarksville Area Chamber of Commerce. And to Rick Goodwin Productions for making this forum possible today. Until next time, I'm Van Stokes saying thank you for watching.